I call to order the July Ways and Means Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
And Alderwoman Parker Tice is absent.
Item number 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
As submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Taken as approved. Item number 3, announcements, appointments, proclamations, and recognitions. I see no items in that section, so we'll move on. Item number 4, citizen comments. At this time, if there are any citizens that would like to come forward for comment, you would be given an opportunity to do so. Going once, going twice. Okay, moving right along. Reports, item number 5, reports of committee chair and alderman. I have no report to give at this time. Alderman Leahy.
No report here.
Alderwoman Parker Tice is absent. Alderwoman O'Neill.
No report.
Okay, item number 6 is the city administrator report.
I have none.
Okay, no report. Item 6A is the budget, fiscal year budget proposed schedule process.
Right.
Karen, do you have any comment on that?
No, it's just pretty straightforward. We're going to be over the next 2 months getting with, particularly BOLA, with the Ways and Means and the other committees to discuss SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then it will be shared with the management team as they start working on their budget. Actually, they've already been sharing, things have been shared with them. August 1st would be the Ways and Means, because that's the first Thursday in August. That's subject to change if that's an issue, but that's where we have it, because it will be the final budget calendar and the budget review, what we've done so far, and a budget workshop specifically, and that's where we invite the public to, right? Mm-hmm. The budget workshop. Yep. And then from then on, we're developing it with the staff and meeting with the staff and the department heads, and then we go from there back to the Ways and Means, which is where we also, September 5th, which is the first Thursday again. September 16th will be where we start talking about the tax rate, because that's due by the end of September to the county, and we still have to present it to the Board of Aldermen. Hopefully by November 18th at the bottom, we will have had public hearings, and the mayor and Board of Aldermen will adopt the 2020 budget. Any questions?
I have a question just on the dates.
Uh-huh.
August 1st is the Ways and Means meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then dropping down, it's September 5th, it says Ways and Means meeting.
Right, which
So
is
are
the
we
next
meeting
month.
before the general meeting?
Of September?
Uh-huh.
I think
I
that's
think
a
that's Labor
Thursday.
Day. I think the first, September 2nd, isn't that Labor Day?
It says September 5th.
Oh, 3rd, sorry, yeah.
But isn't that the first Thursday in September? I think it is.
That is the first Thursday in September.
So that's where we normally schedule.
I'm not questioning that, I'm questioning we have meetings 4 days apart.
No, August 1st. August 1st we'll have one, and then September 5th.
Okay.
Are you talking about the
Yes,
Alderman meeting?
it's August 1st, never mind, that's my
Yeah.
fault.
She
Okay.
just thought it was 2.
Yep.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, okay.
Alderman Leahy, do you have any questions?
No questions.
To further complicate things, I'm going to be out of town August 1st. I'm going to be in Florida. Since we have 3 of the 4 here, do you know would the following, and I'm without any further work than this, would the 8th by any chance work
That'd be first.
to reset?
Do we have, do you know?
I am out of town the 9th of August on.
The night of the 8th is fine.
Yes, I will still be here trying to pull things together.
And Shelley's looking at the calendar for whatever else might be scheduled for August 8th. Ooh, it's dark out, that's not good.
Here,
Just a park program so far, no other meetings that we see under events.
so,
So,
Do you want a motion that we move our meeting to August 8th?
does that need a motion,
It
or
doesn't need a motion.
just maybe tentatively, can we pencil that in, and I will confirm with,
Nancy Parker.
Alderwoman Parker Tice that I'll work. Thank you for accommodating it. Yeah, I'm
Can do,
gonna be in
sure.
Florida.
I
now,
will be out of town the first week in September.
what would you like, is this the 6 o'clock meeting?
It says 6 o'clock, yes.
I'll be gone for 10 days in there, so
I'm not sure it's gonna matter, because you're gonna miss the board meeting as well,
yes.
unless you want to Skype in.
I might try, if you can do it from Canada.
You can do it from anywhere.
Shouldn't make a difference.
I'm committing everyone.
There's no borderline here.
I would be okay with maybe talking about September dates in August, if that, just for the sake of moving this along, or, because I don't know if by that point, Alderwoman Parker Tice will be here, so we can all.
We can handle it.
Okay, all right, so, great, well, thank you, so,
Okay.
moving along to the next,
I just wiped it out.
item 7, department reports, 7A is the finance department financial report
Yep.
for 6
Yes.
months.
Yep, I
Karen?
did it for 6 months because it helps, and it is posted on the website. It helps the department heads, and then it's a real good tool for us too. And then I put together the memo for you. I can't find my memo. Here it is. Right, that gives you, this memo, the little chart, is like the summary of all the funds. And then, you know, you can dig down in detail, but when you come down to it, it's basically the funds at the end of the year. So at 6 months, you can see the general fund looks fine. The orange ones are just showing that we haven't quite collected in revenue what, you know, we haven't collected 50% of the revenue that we should have collected. We have 50% uncollected. So it's not on budget. And then Parks and Rec is again a little over. That, as you see at the bottom, has the letter C, and it is partly due because we have the Brentwood bound project in that fund. And it's slightly over because of, at this point in time, not for the whole year, but at this point in time, because of the land acquisitions we've been making. So with that all said, as we talked about last night, even like the sewer project, it's in the negative, but we haven't gotten all the assessments for revenue. So I'm not worried about it at this time. We're still on schedule of what we want. This just gives you a snapshot picture at the end of June of what it looks like. And then other than that, there's the comments over in the analysis portion of it, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. Yes. Alderman Leahy.
Thank you. Why are we doing Brentwood bound through the parks account? Why isn't it its own account?
It's not the account, it's the fund. And because that's got stormwater and parks fund, and that's a stormwater project, it's all in one fund. That's just the way they set that fund up. And the description of it when we describe it in budgets and the CAFR. So that's why it's there. 'Cause, you know, it would be like setting up a duplicate stormwater fund.
Which we didn't want to do.
Right,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right,
I think so.
okay. Moving along, 7B is Parks and Recreation Department update.
Good evening. I am providing an update on the Richmond Heights cooperative payment. I think if you've read the memo, you've kind of gotten a gist of it, but to kind of let you know, in 2009, the city was paying a fixed payment for our usage of Brentwood residents to use Richmond Heights or the Heights. In 2009, the city moved to a formulaic sort of charge. And so what we found out is this year, the director at Richmond Heights informed us that since 2009, they had been neglecting to charge us the monthly EFT, so the monthly memberships. And what industry standard is somewhere between 50 and 60% of all memberships to a fitness facility is done through monthly memberships. And in our case, it's about 55%. So what we have been being charged in the past, which is somewhere between $53 and $50 and about $60,000. What we budgeted for this year, $59,000, jumped up to $124,000. That is obviously a shock to us and something that we need to think about moving forward. And so the question, when we met with Richmond Heights, they talked about possible payment options and moving forward, those type of things. They said we could either, work with our budget this year and maybe work it into our budget next year, so pay the $59,000 this year and then work in the rest of the payment into our budget next year. Or we could try to pay it all up front. We did discuss this a little bit in Public Works last night. As you see, my recommendation was to kind of pay for it from fund balance. As we did discuss in Public Works last night, we've been doing a little bit of stuff from fund balance, and that might be detrimental to some of the stuff that we're going to be doing with Brentwood Bound. So if it would be better to kind of, and I'm looking at Karen and maybe Bola to help me with the Standard & Poor's aspect of it, if it would be better to kind of pay just the our budgeted portion this year and work into the budget next year, obviously we can obviously help with that as well. So I'm not up to the Standard & Poor's portion of it. That is not my area of expertise. I will defer to them on that. So, but.
I will kind of repeat what I said last night at Public Works, which was when we went for the last two, because they were one right after the other, they noticed, the people in New York City noticed that our fund balance, that they noticed our fund balance policy, and they specifically said to us, and I don't know if you remember, but last year we were going to move $4 million from general fund over to the stormwater before we borrowed all this money. And when we started here, when they asked us that in 17, we made the decision to ask the board that we're going to move this back and not touch our fund balance, because they, even after doing that, they said, you're not even meeting your reserve policy right now, which is 50% in the general fund. So everybody that has said they want to take money out of fund balance this year, my response has been not a flat no or whatever, but let's wait and see closer to the end of the year how much we might have in savings somewhere else. For example, after tonight, there may be savings in a line item for our finances. One thing, we budgeted $150,000, and as you'll see later on, we're probably not going to use all that. So with that said, it may be possible we can pay that at the end, closer to the end of the year. It just remains to be seen. However, it is good, if we do have to take it to fund balance, we do have to take it back to the full board. The full board's going to have to approve that before we can just say we're going to take it out of fund balance. So right now we budgeted, or we are anticipating that we'll be able to add to fund balance except for that one, because of Brentwood Bound. But if you break out just Eric's part, he would probably be adding, his portion would be adding to that fund balance. But we just have to wait and see what's going to happen. And taking from fund balance right now means we would lower how much we're going to increase fund balance. If we, for example, we budgeted 600-something thousand that we think we're going to put in general fund balance, and what the two things that Dan's asked for, we'll lower it to 400-something. And if we keep asking, we'd go in the negative, and we'd truly be touching fund balance at that point.
And I think based on the conversations we had with Richmond Heights, we could probably say, look, what we'd like to do is cut a check for the $59,000 now, so that you're having something in hand now. We'll try to see what our budget looks like at the end of the year. If we have savings, maybe we can do something at the end of this fiscal year and budget the rest for next fiscal year. And then I'm assuming they'd be agreeable to that, saying that they're agreeable to doing a payment plan, for lack of a better word, already.
Real quick, what I forgot to fail to mention about the fund balance and why that's important with Standard & Poor's is they're not going to deny us. They don't deny the money. They rate us, and they could lower our rating, which increases our insurance, and then that money's going to, not interest rate, and then our money's gonna cost us more. That's where the fund balance comes into play. And we also have a capital reserve policy fund balance, which is putting money aside to pay for future capital. That is taken to effect too, that gets affected too. So, I'm sorry.
Question.
I have a question.
Sure.
I feel like we have jumped to the issue of how we are going to pay this money and skipped over the, are we obligated to pay this money? It seemed, I guess I'm heartened to learn that the city of Richmond Heights is willing to work with us for a payment plan they appear to have created. But I would think there are some legitimate affirmative defenses or no breach at all. I mean, this seems to me like a classic contract problem of, I have tendered a contract, it has been, a contract was tendered to us, we accepted it, we paid it, and now they're trying to get more money. I mean, I don't see, I mean, to me, I think there needs to be additional analysis of whether this is, whether and how much that this should be paid rather than just the amount that Richmond Heights has calculated.
No, and it's,
They're owed.
I understand that, and I've looked into that pretty closely. We can look at it two ways, is that it's unfortunate that we've gotten this, and what's happened is this, is that when they've done the reports the last 9 years, I guess, so it's been 9 years, is that when they've run the report, they have neglected to run a half of basically all the memberships that the city owes them. So they have just failed to do that. And so the one way they can look at it is that basically we, for 9 years, have basically been paying only half of what we've owed the city of Richmond Heights.
No, we've paid them what was tendered to us.
Well,
And
yeah.
failure to pay can be seen as a waiver to assert more money owed now. I mean, I feel like there are some traps that need to be run on this. I mean, has Kevin looked at this? I mean, I see all sorts of, to just simply say, okay, sorry that you made a mistake, how much money can I give you in order that it not exist anymore? It just seemed, I'm perplexed in any event, but Alderman Leahy.
If I may, I love this topic. I'll make a couple suggestions, and the committee can either tell me to go home or maybe some of them might resonate. We've had a problem in which 2 years out of that 9, Richmond Heights couldn't even generate a list of who was a Brentwood resident because of computer failures. We had a year where they generated a list, and the list had anybody that had a 63144 zip code to it, but they weren't all Brentwood residents. Some of them were business addresses and employees that were using the Heights through the business. The service that Richmond Heights is providing us is a plus to the residents here at Brentwood. And if their numbers have validity, you're looking at 1,100 out of 8,000 people using the facility. I think that's marvelous. But I think it is time for Brentwood, Maplewood, and Richmond Heights to sit down and look at this whole parks program again. I think right now, besides paying them for memberships and paying a third of the cost of publications, we're not seeing a true benefit from the park back to us, because we don't track how many non-residents from Richmond Heights or Maplewood use our facilities to the fullest extent. I think they would love to have the membership to help cover the cost of their facility, which they're now going through. I think it's an 18 or 20 month full remodeling of the aquatics area, which I think is marvelous because it's the area I use, and I think it needed to be updated. But I think if staff could be directed to have further conversations and look at this whole formula agreement, I think the 2 parties or 3 parties could come to a better understanding. Your memo that came in the email has a list of 20 names on it. That doesn't justify the 610 additional monthly payers that we didn't know about to work with to get to their 1,100.
Unfortunately, I did not provide a list of any names, so I'm not sure.
I have it in my email, and I was confused when I looked at it.
Yeah, it's there. Came in as something.
Yeah, hang on, I gotta get to the email
There were
again.
20 addresses.
20 addresses that were listed in it.
So what I sent
I'm
was an
sorry,
Excel
Bola sent it.
spreadsheet.
Yeah,
So if it was sent in PDF, so you need to confirm for me, I hope I didn't send it in PDF because you're only seeing one page.
I'm only seeing one
There are
page.
multiple pages.
Yeah, so
with
that's probably
multiple
just one
addresses.
tab.
Okay.
So you're probably only seeing a list of maybe those that are seniors as opposed to family, adult, they're different categories, so you're
Okay.
only seeing one page.
We're only seeing one page.
Yeah.
Nothing else pops up to work with. The second question is does this list or has this new list been scrubbed to the other list of residents that we knew that had the yearly memberships that paid it all at once?
This is comprehensive.
So this,
Yeah.
but we have
This is everything.
thing.
It's been
Because it's a
scrubbed.
little, I found it surprising that we got back up to 1,100. At one point, I think we were at 1,430 residents that were using the facility, and then we,
That may be, I don't
Reflect.
remember, we could go back, because
Yeah.
we were provided a list every
Yeah, if you
year.
looked at, so if you look at last year to this year.
Yep.
So, and again, when you look at membership units, because obviously when you think about adults to families, as we kind of talked about last night. So from last year to this year, we had 156 adult memberships, and this year we had 341. So that's an increase of 185. A lot of that, most of that is the monthly EFTs.
Coming in.
Families went from 447 from 203. So that's an increase of 244. Seniors went from 62 to 133, so an increase of 71. So again, that's a healthy increase of, I didn't do the math real quick, but almost 400, over 400 membership units right there, just from the monthly memberships that were not being charged in the past.
now, addressing Mrs. Sims' earlier question, this is the month that they give us the bill.
Correct.
For the year, so it's not as though, they're looking just for this year's billing. They're not
Correct.
looking to go back to the prior years and pick
Correct.
up what they missed billing us for.
No, they're
My
not.
question then, I guess in the form of a motion to the committee, is could we direct staff to open conversations with the Parks Group to evaluate the financial contributions of each park to the program, and maybe come up with a better way of doing this parks program versus what we have?
What does that mean of each park?
Well, you have Maplewoods, Richmond Heights, and Brentwoods. That forms the park
Oh,
consortium.
PARC,
Yeah,
okay.
the consortium. At one point, the city of Brentwood was in an arrangement that we would pay $25,000. That's when we first started this program. We had for 9 years fighting with the administration to try to get this resolved because it kept going up. And we were advised that Richmond Heights had passed an ordinance that we would participate at a $32,000 rate for the city to participate. And then all of a sudden, Mayor Kelly came in with a new formula that said, here, well, this is what the board will pass. I think it's time for the board to have staff reevaluate this and see if we can come up with a better way of using the consortium and financially make all the parties happy.
Don't you think that would be probably a public works thing, like that, we should run up that flagpole first?
Well, the limit that you have here is, yes, he's come to Public Works, but he's also coming to you saying, I have to work out my budget. And that's the Ways and Means side. Give me
Well,
some direction as to what I should put into
It
next year's
has
budget
come up
for
at
this.
Public Works
Let's come
without
at
a
it this way,
second
this is
motion.
specific, let's stay on task, and specific to this, we owe $125,000 for 2018 according to Richmond Heights.
Yes.
Before we say, I would like some additional analysis, legal analysis as to whether or not that claim can be made. And I understand, and if you want to throw in negotiate some peace and do some business, economics too, that's fine. But, I'm to just say that, we owe 100, I don't, I think there's a, find and split the baby, that we'll help them off, we'll take them out of the breach and, not let them, have, bear all of the mistake, but to ask us to bear all of the mistake, I think is kind of, is,
Their argument on this one
Strikes me,
isn't
so-
a mistake. They're saying, here's your membership, those who
No.
paid fully, those who paid monthly, here's your formula. Instead of being 59,000, it should be 129. Here's this year's bill. They're,
right, no, they are asking for payment for last year.
Back.
They're asking for back payment, Andy.
no, Craig told us it's just this year.
No, this is their,
Last year is the year of service that they provided.
this is our current bill. This is the, basically, they basically run the previous year and then they bill us for it. This isn't back payment.
Okay, so this is only just for, well,
Correct.
even still, I mean, we
Okay,
didn't budget for it.
I have a question also.
Okay.
You talked about scrubbing addresses. To me, 1,100 units seems a lot, given the size of our town and how many other physical facilities we have in this town. Have they double-checked to see if these are truly residents or if these are business addresses in Hanley Industrial and we're subsidizing business?
I go through and I look at every address. So I personally go through and look, the first thing they do is they scrub the addresses and make sure that there's some that actually, it goes through a 3-step process. So a staff member at Richmond Heights pulls the report, and they basically start with a 63144 zip code. And then we give them basically a list of all of the Brentwood street addresses, and then a full-time staff person is supposed to eliminate a number of any sort of non-Brentwood addresses. This year being an atypical year, the director of Richmond Heights actually went through that list and eliminated a number of addresses that she realized were not Brentwood addresses. That's an additional step that typically doesn't happen. Every year after that, the report comes to me, and then I take a look at every address, go through that list, and then typically I have a good handle on Brentwood addresses. But if there's some that I don't realize, I go through Google Maps, and then I go through St. Louis County property. Yes, every year.
All right, seems
May I?
fine.
And I'll be honest, the list that you got was prior to me going through. So if you look, there's a couple on the one page you already have that are a Pocahontas address, which is a Rock Hill address that I already took off the list. So I noticed that this morning or this afternoon when I got that.
Eric, if I may run a blind test against what you've done.
Sure.
Would you please check the 2018 list, which is your billing right now, for my address? Because both my wife and myself discontinued our membership in 2017 because of their upcoming construction project.
Sure.
So we did not have a 2018 membership. If the list is valid, my address should not be in there.
Sure.
But if it
What
is,
what
then
is
I'm
your
gonna,
address?
2833 Manderley. If it is in there, then the list has a suspect to it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
So what do you need from us as far as going forward? I mean, do you,
You said you want us to do additional research, talk to Kevin?
yeah, that's what I mean, is there a time, is there we need to get back to them in 10 days? I mean,
No,
can this
we'll
wait a
just
month?
communicate that
Yeah.
the committee wants us
Can-
to do further research.
Can I ask clarification on one thing? You had some very good legalese terminology about, since we hadn't paid it in the past, it might be some sort of, I forgot how you worded it.
Oh, I just,
It sounded very
God, what we're
legal, and
gonna
and I couldn't write it down. I guess I'd go back to the tape,
you know,
but
like, waiver contract, the idea is that they've already, they're trying to get money for which there hasn't been, that's not part of the contract. Or that maybe that there might be some kind of waiver to assert the claim since the contract's already been tendered, but I'll send you.
Get all that?
Kevin is a lot better when you talk legalese to him, so, and I might check the tape with Shelley.
The legalese would get me out of this.
There's,
Like-
I'll be honest, you're on a roll, and you rolled out some good legalese out there, and I was like, I can't write that down quick
My
enough, so.
intent is not to upset them with this. The intent is to make the park program work. I would like to try to get the cost.
Well, no, I mean,
Yes.
I think we're dealing with two things, Andy. I mean, I want to
Okay.
focus on, what is the consequence and how should the responsibility be shared on,
The county.
the amount that they are now asserting is owed. And, if that's making a business decision, if that's both parties realizing settlement is the best way, or
Okay.
scorching the earth from the, I mean, I don't know what it is, but that's more my interest, and I'd just like to do some further analysis.
And if the chair of Public Works wants me to work on something for Public Works Committee, I think he can let the city administrator know, and I can start working on that.
Sounds good.
So, all right, thank you.
All right.
Oh, hi, John.
Item 8 is the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review
Motion.
the minutes?
Give me 30 seconds.
Motion to approve as submitted.
I guess I second it, don't I?
But I don't, if you feel like you need a moment to review,
Yeah,
that's
I-
fine.
yeah.
If there's not a little icon on the agenda, I don't open it. So we need to get an icon under the minutes to show us or something, tell us that they're up there. Everything looks kosher.
Motion to approve as
Alderman
submitted.
Leahy has a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
I guess that can I approve by acclamation, or everyone approve, say aye.
Aye.
Item number 9 is old business. I see no items there. Item 10 is new business. 10A is request to use the Brentwood bound video. Who's got that one?
10A?
That's what I'm seeing.
I think that was Janet Levy's.
So I think this was a request
Yeah.
from a gentleman who's a resident from Brentwood to have access, I'm trying to pull up the memo, to have access to,
Brentwood bound video, right?
to use the Brentwood bound video as part of the Centennial video. So this is Dan Duffy. Dan used to be on the communications committee, and the city paid for this video. So that's why we're bringing it before the committee for approval for him to use the video to celebrate the city centennial.
Alderman Leahy.
I have a question. How long is the video that we got made? I thought it was,
The city's video,
Yeah.
we made multiple videos,
okay.
so in different lengths. So I
but
don't.
He's asking for 22 seconds of the video. I thought we had
We
a,
had one that's 3 minutes,
Right.
one 9
Yeah.
minutes, it varies.
but I assume they've seen
Because it's
all
on
of
the
it. And this
city
is,
website.
that's the most they want? I don't,
The
this is
city
the-
is paying for Dan Duffy to make this video, to produce the video.
And he's
as
asked-
part of the funds that we allocate
Okay.
to the Centennial
yeah.
Brentwood.
Century
Centennial
Foundation would like to use it.
Exactly.
And we're helping fund them, so by
Right.
rights, the permission is can we have permission to get to it?
Yeah.
I'll make the motion to do it. I just found it odd that if we have minutes worth of videos, why only 22 seconds?
I understand that part, I just am confused if it's something the city is paying for, going to something the city is paying for, why is this an issue?
They need our permission because we're the ownership of the document. The Brentwood Foundation isn't. They're asking, can we
Oh,
have
because
permission
they're
to use
separate
it?
from the city. Okay,
Yeah.
I second the motion.
Yeah.
The motion to approve the use of the video has been made by Alderman Leahy, seconded by Alderman O'Neill. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. It stands approved. 10B, amendments to the employee handbook.
Jason Coates.
Good evening. I've got quite a few that I wanted to go through. Most of the items that are listed on the memo that was included are more or less just clarifications, trying to get things squared away. I can go through them. I didn't want to read the entire document, but I can if you want me to. But the nuts and bolts, the first portion, 2.1 is just making sure that we've got the clarification of some of the positions within the city, just again to bring our handbook up to date. Section 2.2, under the excuse me, there's another section a little bit further down under that employment classification that just strictly clarifies the length of term for the elected officials. Under section 2.2, it just removes a portion with regards to nepotism, as that's covered in an additional portion of the policy. Yes?
I had a question about that, because when I read that, that seems to be in violation of the constitutional amendment regarding nepotism. In that, and it says, any public officer or employee in this state who by virtue of his office or employment names or appoints to public office or employment any relative within the fourth degree by blood or affinity shall thereby forfeit his office. So if the law seems to be that you can't hire relatives, we seem to be saying that you can if they work for Parks and Rec or Public Works. I don't see how that gets.
No, it's just saying part-time seasonal employees within the Parks and Rec Department.
But the law is, it's Article 7, Section 6,
Okay.
says you can't, I almost got someone removed in another city, they're terminated, because they hired their husband to do some, very, minuscule amount of work. It's a quo rento proceeding. So, I guess that when I was just looking at this,
Sure.
that struck me, that maybe we should review that so that it's at least follows.
Absolutely. Well, my apologies on that, then. I'll remove that from the
You can
proposal
have
here
the-
and take a look.
If you want I even printed out the section.
Okay. All right, moving down, the next portion, just as far as the employee background check, just adding some of the additional background checks that we do run periodically. Was there another question, or?
No, I was just saying, we have had this, we have read this. We really don't need to go through
Okay.
it bit by bit.
Well,
Well-
if I have a question, or if someone in this committee has a question, I think it's appropriate that we ask.
Oh, I do too, but
Would you just, how about we just go by that route? Were there any questions with regards to any of the portions that was included in the document? And then I can address those specifically.
no, I was going to comment that this is the kind of work that is delicate and has to be checked out and takes lots of time and doesn't sound like it's much fun to go through. But you have done a good job of trying to get everything consistent with everything else.
Well, I'm trying to get there. As you can see, I've been kind of doing it since I got here. There's little by little, but this will be something that probably at least on an annual basis, if not semi-annual, we'll make adjustments as needed.
Well, it's a lot of work and makes sense.
So were there any specific questions or issues with regards to anything? Oh, I thought this was going to be a little more difficult. Okay, well.
No, actually, you started in section 2, were you intending to go?
Well, I was just going through the document that I had submitted. So, I can continue to go through that document, but if you had a specific area of concern, I'm glad you brought that particular portion up. That was an area that I was unaware
I
of.
propose that we strike promotional period section, and if there are no questions on the remainder, then perhaps the committee might be willing to entertain a motion.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, I do not. I like what I read.
I had another one.
So,
On item 7, I think it went to, I think it was 7.4,
Okay.
and I think maybe there might be some implication.
The comp time?
Yeah, section 7.2. Is there any? I just noticed that the hours increased. Are there any financial implications to that, or?
Oh, as far as carrying the
Yeah.
comp time? Not really, because actually, in many ways, it would be a reduction. Let me clarify. The city was still under the obligation to ultimately compensate the individuals for the time that they work. What we're doing right now, in the event that they exceed that 80-hour threshold, they receive on our paycheck what is called comp overflow payout. So basically, we're forced to pay out the overtime ahead of time as opposed to the employee carrying it to utilize at a later date. And my main reasoning for wanting to do this is that the policy as it is currently in the handbook, as it relates to the police department, was put in place when the police department worked 8-hour shifts. They now work 12-hour shifts. So in order to have parity between our police and our fire department, the fire department, we allow them to carry 240 hours of comp time, which is equivalent to 10 shift days. I was just simply wanting to extend that same courtesy to the police department since they now work 12-hour shifts. We have, of the 27 or so shift officers that this would apply to, we have probably about 4 or 5 that bump that threshold without all the time. They're constantly at 80. So for the majority of the employees, it probably won't mean a darn thing. But there are going to be a few that will then carry a slightly higher amount of comp time. Again, we're going to have to pay that either at the time it's earned if they bump the cap and we have to pay it out then, or they just simply carry that balance and use it at a later date. So regardless, it's incurred by the city no matter whether we pay it now or we pay it at a later date.
Okay, answers my question.
Motion to approve the changes to the full board.
So I just a point
Go
of
ahead.
clarification, as far as, we're moving this on to the full board as amended?
As
Do we need
amended.
to?
As amended.
Do we
As
first need to
amended.
strike section 2.2?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so I think the first motion is motion to strike section 2.2 of this.
Second the motion. That gets rid of the nepotism.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so then next, the chair will entertain a motion to,
Forward the
forward,
changes.
thank you, Andy, forward the changes as amended onto the board.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Super. And thank you. That was a good job. Now, how do I close this without?
Item 10C is a request for CPSM to replicate the workload deployment data report prepared previously, covering the September 15 to August 16 budget amendment. Who's got that one?
So I can take that. I don't have my iPad with me, so I'm trying to read this from my phone, and
Would you like a bigger screen?
it's a little challenging. So the request was made by the Public Safety Committee that, there it is, perfect, thank you. That I ask CPSM to provide a quote to replicate the workload deployment data report that was previously prepared covering the time period of 1st of September 2015 through August 31st, 2016. And CPSM provided a quote stating that it would cost $22,000. However, they would give the city a discount because the city administrator belongs to the International City Management Association. The committee felt that there was a need to find results that would possibly show if there has been any changes in the workload measurement from that time period to present. So we have that proposal. They forwarded it to this committee, and we were tasked with finding funds to pay for it. So in the narrative before you, and this is another item that's on this agenda later on, where Karen reports on the financial software. We budgeted $150,000 for that. The quote came in at less than $100,000. So if we were to use savings from that, we believe that would cover the cost of this expense.
Just one second. I can comment a little bit on this since I'm on the Public Safety Committee. Our thought process here was, our police is different from how it was when this report was issued. And we are evaluating, the extent to which, I don't think it's whether, but how much we need to add to the force. And we wanted to know what was new and different and, what, going forward. So we thought we needed to get an updated report in order to understand that since, patrol staff, it's different from how this was, a lot has happened since the issuance of this report. So that is that is why this is being requested.
The older report was based on the 8-hour shifts, 3 of them through the day.
No, it was the 12-hour shift.
That was a 12-hour shift too? We'd already changed it that time?
Yeah.
So you're taking the old 12 hours and comparing to the new 12 hours is what they're looking
The
to
same
do?
12 hours. Yeah.
And see if we're allocating our officers on the street and the staff to make the police department work effectively.
It's looking at the workload data, how much is being done during their scheduled work hours, during their 12-hour shift. What do they do? What percentage is allocated toward administrative time? What percentage is allocated toward patrol, training, different factors like that. So that is what this analysis will produce.
And I'm venturing that all of this is so that we can either justify or give support to looking at increasing our police department.
Or oppose it. I mean, you know, we don't know, we don't know.
We don't have a measuring
No,
stick at
that's
this
the point.
point.
You know, you say you need 10 guys or girls, or you say
Yeah.
you need 2, I don't know. And so, you know, that's a sort of broad brush
Big bru-
example,
yeah.
but that was the thought process behind wanting to get this updated piece of the CPSM report.
So, I don't remember seeing figures like this before, but this is the second part of a study, so the first part exists with the same sort of graphs and charts and...
So it looks like this.
Yeah,
It's
the
on-
attachment that they
Yeah,
gave us.
but actually looking at the pie charts and everything else, this is going to be useful enough to know something.
I personally think it will, you know, because of how things have changed since that report was issued. So we, you know, and so the numbers and the recommendations may need revision, and to the extent we want an up-to-date picture so that we can staff our, you know, our
Time is being
force,
used
you know,
enough.
appropriately.
And so this is the end of the financial request. Paying this is it, there's no more study.
Well, there could always be more study.
Oh, I know, we're good at
But
that.
right now, there's just this study.
But this is the end of this
Okay.
study.
Yes.
Okay. So what do we need to do?
If we're in favor of wanting to justify the study, we have to find funds to cover that cost.
Right.
If we believe, and I guess I'm coming in a little cold, has there been a request to increase or decrease the police department that I'm not aware of?
Chief Spees is here, and he can speak to that.
So, forgive me, I'm caught cold.
No, and I'm confused too, because I'm not sure if we're authorizing money for another study, paying for this one, or what. This is not very clear to me.
Hi.
Hi.
Just real quick, some background on this topic. In the fall of last year, the Public Safety Committee asked whether or not the staffing was at a level in the police department that, as the chief, I felt was necessary. And my answer at the time was no, and it really revolves around the issues we're having at night. So car break-ins, armed robbery events, things that are happening at night in Brentwood. It's very common now, probably a little different than it was in 2015 and 16. It's very common in other cities all around us. This is a very specific issue that we don't have manpower to address. So that kind of prompted this conversation when, as the months wound by, Alderman Plufka ordered that we do a study, a comparative study of the cities around Brentwood in terms of the number of officers that they have, the number of their population, all of these different ingredients, which we completed and gave to BOLA, who turned it over to the Public Safety Committee meeting. And in that study, just as an example, the city of Richmond Heights has 44 officers. So they're staffed quite a bit higher than the city of Brentwood, even though they're a very close comparative city. So that prompted conversations about, do we need more people? And again, this is over the course of the last few months. Most recently, I was asked by the Public Safety Committee what I felt we needed. And my answer was, I think we need 4 officers and a sergeant specifically for a night watch approach to affecting crime. So in response to that, as the alderman looked at it, Alderman Kramer recommended that, hey, we're not against the upping of manpower, but we want to justify it by evaluating the police department using CPSM. So that's where you are today in terms of,
All right.
is there anything I can fill in other than that for you? Ms. O'Neill, with regarding your question about the study, the first cost in Bola, and Karen, if you can help me here, was in the 40s, 45,000.
100.
So that initial study in 15 to 16 study was around $45,000 roughly. And obviously this is a cheap thing to do. So their next study, follow-on study, is the $22,000 that they gave Bola.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I think at this point it would be to move this up to the big board, right? I guess- Do you have other questions?
Well, in moving it to the board is one thing. Are we looking to find a way to fund this if we just choose to go down this way? Is that what they're asking the Ways
Yes,
and Means Committee to?
we just identified the way to fund
Would be
it.
savings.
You're anticipating that you're not gonna spend $150,000 on the computers, that you'll have $50,000.
And in the
to float.
budget, we have budgeted 200-something thousand coming from the general fund to the capital improvement fund. My thing is in the capital improvement fund. We're not gonna need as much to go to the capital fruit, so it's gonna stay in the general fund, and then it will still come out of his department. We're just gonna move it somewhere else in the general fund.
Which sounds fine, but are there other items in which we might need to take that extra money and fund something else? Do we have a wish list of other things?
Yeah, there's a
you
whole
do.
bunch of wish lists, but they keep saying they're gonna take it out of fund balance. And this one, I said, no, I know where somebody is for this one, so.
I mean, there is a limit to how much the
Exactly,
can provide.
exactly,
so.
right.
I think this would be a marvelous topic to take to the full Board of Aldermen to discuss whether or not spending $20,000 for a manpower assessment for the police department. So I'll move to do that, because I think the full board should be in on the conversation.
I agree.
Second, I take that as a motion by Alderman Leahy and a second by Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Okay.
the motion to move this on to the board, big board is approved.
Can I ask in retrospect? CPSM is the only group that does this. There doesn't need to be bids put out for other groups to do it.
CPSM is the firm that did the initial study.
That doesn't mean they should do another one. It's
Except
always
my
good.
guess is another one might be more expensive because they're gonna probably use some of the data
I'd have to
from the old report.
retread all the work.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right, fine.
All right, moving on. Item D, request for budget amendments to the capital improvement budget for fiscal year 19, street project, alternate project, Swim Club Lane. Come on down.
Okay. I know we discussed this in Public Works, just to bring you up to speed. We bid these streets out, just like we do every year. But in particular, these four base streets exceed the adopted 2019 budget by roughly $61,000. And what we typically do each year is we also bid out some alternates. And in past years, we were always underneath our budget, so we wound up doing some alternates. If you recall last year, we added Hatton Lane and some other roadways. This particular year, there's no way we can afford all the alternates as presented, because if you look at the lowest one, that was Marshutes, and that was over $300,000. But it does actually get us in the budget mode for 2020. If we want to do some of these other streets, we can put those in the 2020 budget. But in particular, Swim Club was asked if we could do it in 2019. And it isn't budgeted in 19, but rather 2023. So if you look at the alternative Swim Club, which is A4 plus the base bids, which would be those four that are listed here, and I also included the RFP to show you the schematics of where these places are, just because Hanley Industrial and things like that, Hanley Industrial runs kind of everywhere. So you can see from the RFP, and you can see the dollar amounts. If you choose to do these, the impact you can see under finances, we're looking at roughly $114,000 bust that we need to cover. And not to sound like a broken record, but we did talk about fund balance at Public Works, picking up the slack. So, and you can see the motion was made and seconded to go ahead, bring it, to the full board. But before that, we have to hit this intermediate step, which is Ways and Means, because it's a budget question. So I'm looking for direction. Do you want to do those four base streets for the increase of 61,000 plus alternate A4.
All right, I have a question.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
The one of the 4 streets that I find unusual is this Park Ridge Alley, which I have never known existed. Doesn't seem to do anything, it doesn't lead anywhere, it looks like someone.
It's actually a public roadway that we own, and it's flagged as public.
Why do we have it, and why do we need to repave it?
It's in poor condition, but, it could be deferred, if you wanted to defer that one.
It's what?
Good question.
I still can't hear you.
Good question.
Oh, okay. Can the city perhaps say we don't need this anymore and have a?
I think the city can definitely defer this. We patch the potholes, right? So it's drivable, and if you're looking on a priority list, because you have limited funds, could you
go
defer
anywhere.
this? Absolutely,
It just
you
goes
can.
into the middle of a block.
You should.
This is
Right.
ridiculous.
You should.
Yeah, I mean, it is owned by us, and we were trying to get everything paved, so that then we're getting a routine of just maintenance. But
Family industrial needs paving ever so much more than
Right.
the road to nowhere. Can we take that out and defer it, or talk about finding a way to get it off the city property list? And
Well,
maybe-
I think that we probably want to maintain it, but when you have limited funds, can you still preserve it in a way that's drivable?
But why are
But
we-
not do it this year,
Why are we preserving it? For
because
what?
It's a public
It's a
roadway,
public
yeah.
roadway. We own it.
Okay, so my question is, do we need to own it?
well, we do own it. The Park Ridge Alley, we do
We
own it.
already
maybe now.
own it.
Yeah, we already own it.
Sometimes you downsize. This looks like a perfect
Right.
way to downsize something.
I mean, this one's kind of like if you think about Brazos, there's a Brazos Alley and there's a Brazos Avenue. The Brazos Alley serves the homes in the rear. Trash trucks use it to pick up trash.
But this doesn't serve anything, except for somebody's driveway. It doesn't serve any purpose.
Why don't we
Yeah.
ask the city attorney about this? I think it's complicated.
Right.
When you own a public roadway and you want to give it away.
Sell it for $1.
But who would you sell it to?
The person who has the driveway there, who has the city paying them for their driveway.
What if they don't want to buy it?
I think we're
Okay.
suspect here.
All right,
But
can we defer it and
So
talk
part of the
about this
motion,
again?
part of the motion when you're there would be to defer any work on this alley. And then maybe you want to go through the list, if you want to have a
The others are
discussion
fine.
on each list. But the question still remains, there's not sufficient money within the current budget to do all 4, in addition to the swim club lane. So if we eliminate 30, which one's the low bid on this one, Dan?
NB West at $122,414.
So we eliminate 16,000, we're still short. So,
To go on, of the 4, the Strasser Drive to Urban is probably less potholed than some of the others. If we had to defer another one, that might be a good one to defer.
You're outside my neighborhood now. I mean, what is the harm with just moving? I mean, you can always vote against it at the main meeting. I mean,
Well-
I'm somewhat reluctant to
Pick and choose them
pick and
here,
choose.
yes.
I'd rather have the weight and.
so what would be the recommendation from this body?
That, let me throw a bigger question. We have a 2019 budget. We've approved, and we had the streets that we wanted done. What happens if I go, the alternate streets need to get done, put them in your 2020 budget? How much trouble have I created for the residents?
We can do that.
I was gonna say,
The biggest one is the swim club lane.
because
Right.
they came in and said, I'm gonna do
Yes,
construction.
right.
And we agreed, let's
Right.
get them
There
constructed.
seemed to be some sort of agreement that the city would do it this year.
But
So-
we postponed doing it last year.
Right.
So they could do construction.
Exactly.
Now they got the construction done.
Miscommunication, and we did not budget it in this year.
Yeah, and thus, we're picking up the slack to do it.
Right.
If I put swim club into this year's budget, is it still permissible for me to pull a road that is in the budget to
Yes.
adjust
Yes.
So my cost doesn't go through the
Yes.
roof, and back it up to that.
You can do that.
So here's where I'm looking. I'd love, Dan, if your group would look at that type of option, stay within my financial constraints, prioritize the streets that you are looking at, and tell me how to make it, I can do what I can and stay in the number amount and get these people taken care of, and to put the rest of them into 2020.
So the cost for the swim club,
It's 52,000. We only have 61, so that leaves you
that would
with,
only allow you to do maybe that street and the Park Ridge Alley.
right.
Now, from there, how much grief have I created for those streets that are going to be delayed another 7 months?
I don't know that there is grief. I think that there is an expectation that we will do it, but we only do what we can if we have the means to do it.
Yes,
So
and I'm
it's
staying
just-
constricted.
It's a communication. We communicate that when Dan makes the presentation at the board meeting.
Yes.
And then the board either redirects staff entirely.
I would
Yeah.
love to know if you can give me that and tell me what I can and can't do. We're at the back end of the last.
Yes, we are.
So many streets.
Right.
Right.
So if we go one more year,
Exactly.
we went 5 years on Brentwood Boulevard with the county.
Right.
If I can get one more year off and not have to kill my financing, I see a simpler approach.
That's what we were hoping for, Karen and I.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karen, did I get the?
No, this is good. This is the outcome. we
That's what
really
I was
wanted.
when reading, that's where I was headed with this.
Yes.
Now, yes, it needs to go to the full board, because you may have members on the full board that says, no, Andy, it's 2 streets in my ward and I need them done now. I am allowing staff expertise to tell me the criticality of the rating of their streets, to tell me what really needs to get done. The board should have a chance to chime in. I'm not making a motion to, let's find funding and do this. Let's have a discussion. I'd love to know if an option is possible at the full board level. Possible.
Well, not to complicate things, but if West is the successful bidder and
Yeah.
you start taking things out, it might drive the cost up for the individual pieces, because you figure their insurance and overheads are spread out over 4 jobs, and if you eliminate it to 1 or 2,
Yes. and
you're not going to see the same 30,000, 43,000. It might
So is
spike
there,
them.
there's an economy of scale to do
Right.
it? I mean,
Right.
I would entertain like hearing prioritization, deferring.
Right.
I mean, you know, is that something?
Good. We can do that. And if
Yeah.
you really look at it, when you add up the total amount,
Yep,
West isn't necessarily the low bidder on each street.
correct.
It varies, so.
Yeah, they're the lowest on the base, which is what we were running with. And if you look at the alternates, technically Marshoots is the lowest,
right.
but Krupp is the lowest for A4 swim club. And I talked to Krupp specifically and said, knowing economies of scale, could you do it for the 52? And they said yes, the 52,198 they would honor for swim club only.
But was your bid proposal written that allowed us to cherry pick by the street?
Not the base.
Not the base.
core.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in moving around and playing a little bit of shuffle,
Right.
I have to give my vendor a chance to chime in. If you do
Right.
this, this is what my cost does. My hope is he works with us.
Yeah, that's why we talked to Krupp, because we thought, well, if you are very adamant about doing swim club, give him the benefit of the doubt, because what if he says it's 60,000 and not 52? And he put it in an email saying that he would honor it, and all he needs is 3 days to do it, and he wants it 3 days consecutively where it's closed from Rosalie to the north, and nobody's gonna mess with him, he'll just knock it out. That's if you wanna do that one by itself.
We'll bring it back to the.
Yeah.
So is there a motion?
Motion to go to the full board
Well,
for the,
hold on.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
What is, so is, I'm confused with what we're doing here. I mean,
So-
are there additional?
So I thought I heard you say prioritize?
Yeah, to what extent, I mean, if, you know, is there a time frame on this? Can we find out if we can prioritize and maybe kick the can down the road on some?
then bring it
to the
back.
others? But if it's gonna be, oh, twice as expensive, I'd like to
Right.
know that too. I mean.
So why don't we, talk to all the vendors, the contractors, right?
Yeah, because worst case, you might have to rebid it.
To the August meeting.
Okay,
Ways and
sounds-
means.
that works for me. Do you
Okay.
need-
So bring it to
We
August.
don't need a motion for that.
And I like the idea of prioritizing which streets. The urban drive is obviously in worse condition than others. so
Yes, I would agree.
Prioritize by need too.
By need. By need and condition. then bring it back in August. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We'll move on to item E, which is a request for budget amendment to the capital improvements budget to City Hall, ADA improvements. Who's got that one?
I have that one, so I'll just stay here. If you look, I had included the plans just to get your bearings. So there's basically three alternates. There's the west side of the building, there's the north side, which faces the post office, and the east side, which faces the library. We're looking at doing the City Hall customer service improvements. That's out for bid now. We'll get the bids back August 1st. As such, with those improvements, we met with our ADA coordinator, and she suggested that we do these exterior improvements as well, so that it matches the interior. So this would basically be a ramp on the Brentwood Boulevard side. It would be changing a little bit of the parking lot and adding some stalls that are strictly ADA capable on the north side, the post office side, and then also the eastward side, adjusting that sidewalk and the improvements to the library entrance. So we talked about it at Public Works, and the question was, do you have to do all three? In a perfect world, I would say yes, you do. But knowing that we have budget constraints, the two most important would be alternate 1 and 2, because they go hand in glove. 3, there is a dedicated ADA stall on the east side.
Yes.
They just said that the sidewalk, some of the slope and the width and that doesn't meet current ADA standards. So they would prefer that you do that, but if you couldn't, what you could do is split alternates 1 and 2 in the 19 budget, and then alternate 3 would roll into the 2020. But again, the total of all three is roughly $69,000. The $69,000 would come out of sidewalks, which is budgeted at 100, which then leaves you with roughly 30-ish to do sidewalks, and that's not enough if you want to keep up with the sidewalks. Because typically we did anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 worth of poly level, and then the rest we did in-house, where we tore out, repoured sidewalks. We've done areas down in Manderley, White, all over, ward by ward, wherever they're the highest priority based on either vertical separation, joints coming apart, spalling. So that's the question, do you want to definitely do this particular project? We're still waiting again for a key piece of financial data, which would be the bids on August 1st for the building itself.
But the recommendation was to do
This is for the exterior
1 and
improvements.
2 in 19, and then 3 and 20.
From Public Works, correct.
Alderman.
In the interior remodeling of City Hall, are we going all the way down to the north door? I know we're doing everything from the front door down the corridor to the elevator to work with. But I didn't recall going down through the north corridor.
The north corridor, or are you talking the main door, the west side, the Brentwood Boulevard
It
side?
would be the north door, the door that's locked.
Right, we're not going,
So I could actually just do the west front office in my remodeling and not touch my library or my staircase to work with. But you were mentioning parking lot. I need to do something on the parking lot?
there's a
Make those
transformer that would sit at the northwest corner. They're gonna dedicate 2 parking stalls for ADA compliance that would have van accessibility. That would be on that northwest corner. So a van could pull up, let the person come out on a chair or whatever, and then they could take this ramp to the Brentwood Boulevard side door, because there's a ramp, a series of switchback ramps. Then the door would open, and then you could go right in. Now, the main lobby with the terrazzo, that stays. It'll be polished and some painting and some minor finishes, but that meets ADA. It's flat, it's level. Then when you come past the new secure doorway, then that's ADA ramps that then takes you up to the first floor. So the recommendation was to do those 2 pieces,
For the other two,
Right.
2020.
because per the ADA coordinator, she's like, well, if you're going to touch the inside, you've not done the outside for years. I would really like you to do all of it.
It would make sense to do those 2, because someone coming into City Hall would need to
Right.
park at that north parking lot, where if you're coming to the library, there's already some space there.
There is. Yeah, that's why I pointed that out.
And then you have the elevator if you
Right.
need the elevator.
And it's got an automated door, so if you come with a walker, or cane, or whatever, it'll automatically open up. You can get access to the elevator. You can go up to the main floor. The new improvements will have kind of a doorbell where you would press, it would ring the front desk, and then they could see visually who's at that back door if they needed access.
So is there ever a need to redo these by the library? Why?
Per the coordinator, she said that certain things don't meet ADA, the width, the slope, so that's why it was
When you're
suggested the
making
east side.
improvements or renovations to the
Right.
building, you gotta
Yes,
bring
if you
everything
Right.
hit that
else into
threshold, we
compliance.
have to come
Yeah.
conform.
But knowing that we're, conscious of budget, could you push the 26,000 out, or would you want to just take it all in one bite and do 69,000 and it gets everything knocked out in these plans and you're done?
I like the suggestion of doing two and pushing one into
We have an
2020.
alternative recommendation. So you
Okay.
know that 150 that Karen mentioned earlier?
Yep.
In the savings, instead of using fund balance, maybe we can take it out of there.
So in which case we could do all three? Or just the
No,
two?
we would just do 1 and 2.
Oh, so, okay, so 1 and 2, but we wouldn't,
Yes.
so,
Oh, you wouldn't touch fund balance?
Yeah.
But weren't we using
I like
that,
if we don't have to,
weren't
20
we
hours.
using that same savings to look at possibly covering the $20,000 for the?
That's where we are, but
I mean, so how many times do I touch into that $50,000 savings?
No, there's more than 50,000 there. There's about $100,000
Oh.
or 80 or 80.
Oh, that wasn't clear. We can spend more money.
well, I wasn't trying to throw that
I was,
number out.
I
let
was
me
at
tell you.
50 and that was
Yeah,
my
I know.
conservative cushion.
So 80 minus 20,
Gives you
yeah,
60.
60.
Minus 42.9.
Dan, what is your professional recommendation? What would
Well,
you-
if we had that money, we could look at savings and do the whole thing.
No,
No? I mean, I would prefer to get it all knocked out, but if you're offering me some free money,
No, I'm not
we
offering
want to
you
Yeah.
spread this
We wanna
around so
spread this,
everybody.
but, I mean,
benefits.
philosophically, I think our city hall should be open to everybody.
Right.
So, but it sounds like that the recommendation
We're just
from
not doing
Public
that street
Works.
in your ward.
Except the street in my ward, apparently.
This is where you
Yeah.
bring your checkbook, and the minute you all start getting comfortable writing the checks, you understand where the cash comes from.
But
yeah, because these improvements will let you enter the council chamber, which currently folks can't because there's stairs. You realize there's a couple stairs that you have to climb.
Yep.
Then go through that threshold, turn, then there's another series of steps by Shelley's office.
Well, we're gonna put that ramp in that.
Right, exactly.
All
That'll
that.
solve all that. So if you have physical limitations, this will allow you to be able to
So would we
navigate.
not need a budget amendment in that case?
Yeah, you gotta
But it
still
will
account.
come down at the end of the year when
Right.
we do the one big one.
We're just transferring from one fund to
Right.
another. We will need a budget amendment, but we're not tapping into fund balance.
So what kind of motion do you need from us tonight?
A motion to approve option 1, alternate 1 and 2, with funding coming from
From
savings.
Yeah.
Out of the capital
In the
budget.
capital
Will
budget.
this work physically be done
Yes.
and completed
Yes.
in the 2019?
Not the
cap-
entire project, but this will.
No,
Yeah, this
if we
one.
go
Alternate
over at 1 and 2.
Dan?
Yeah, this will be. We need to notify the contractor. He's kind of on pause till he knows
What
1
he's-
and 2 and 3 or 1 and through 3.
Because if it's not done
I get to
by
put
the
it in
end of
20.
19, it's going in 2020
Right.
budget.
Because what we would do is we could do a contract with him, do 1 and 2, put a hard date as to when they need to be completed, and then 3 would be 2020, and you would pick a date when you want it
budget.
done. And budget.
Yeah.
You would put it as part of your budget process for 20, which we know the amount, and if it needs to be adjusted for inflation, have him tell us, or can he do it for the same dollar amount?
In your discussions with the contractor, is he in agreement that doing the outside first and then doing the inside is the right way to go versus doing the inside first and tearing up so that when you finish, you clean the outside up?
Well, I know they wanted to do
Shoot
the
it up with
outside
your
because of the
equipment.
weather. They want to do the outside because they can tear it out now, either summer into summer, have it poured and done before the first snowflake falls. And it will help in the sense that if you had the ramp and you're moving furniture in and out, you'll have a ramp instead of stairs that constantly move things in and
Okay,
out.
So he's on board with doing that. All
Right. Or he said if you wanted it in 2020, then, you would have to write that in the contract as to the dates.
Delay payments.
Yeah.
So,
So-
do you have a question?
No, I was going to move whatever Bola said as a motion.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. The chair will
Alternate 1 and
entertain
2.
a motion to add alternate 1 and 2 to the 2019 budget to come from
Savings from capital.
From capital.
Yes.
Did I get it?
Yes, excellent.
So that needs.
It needs a
That
second.
needs a first and a second.
Oh, I make that motion. If the chair can't.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I understand what we're spending.
All those in favor say
Well,
aye.
do we need
Aye.
discussion that you don't like this motion?
I'm in agreement with Karen. If I can delay it and put it into a physical calendar year budget and know it's coming, instead of, yeah, I'm gonna have a savings somewhere and it's not that big of a number and I'll find a way to cover it in December. But if I give you 40 things to cover in December and you can't come up with all of it, I'm in trouble. I don't wanna run the fund balance because we are gonna go after the sales tax arrangement and get more bonds. So I'm trying to stay cautious. I
So you're not
understand.
opposed to this motion and this
I'm not-
project?
yeah.
You just-
In this
it's the
moment.
fi-
This
it's the
goes to
finance.
the full
In this
board.
committee, in this moment,
Yeah.
you're not opposed.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this goes to the full board.
All right, so are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, okay, stands approved. Moving on to item F, request for proposal financial system software package.
Okay, so this is really easy because we budgeted $150,000 and it's $65,948. But very quickly, we did go out to bid. We got 5 bids. As I put in my memo, they were anywhere from the low bid of $65,948 to $207,481. And those top 2 were not in the state of Missouri.
Okay.
This wasn't an easy choice. We went, as I told you what all we did, we created a committee with my staff, IT, and I even called in our CPA accountant. The IT did their own criteria, I did my criteria. We interviewed them, they came in and did each did a half-day presentation. We called references. Even when we called references, we did not have a clear-cut number one. Everybody liked both of who they had. But one of the things I did heavily rely on was the fact that our CPA that helps us at the end of year, she sat in on this and then she mentioned that, as I quote, being a conservative accountant, I did not believe in buying something for the shiny bells and whistles they are rarely utilized. And I have to agree with her because I think there were a lot of things in the second highest bidder that we probably wouldn't use. And then I also checked with, I don't know if you remember, but Rana Alvarez, who was the interim finance director when I came and worked with me a little bit. She's actually worked with the second vendor and I'm quoting, I would run the other way. Even with all that, we could have worked with either one. We chose Zorbrio, and we have Matthew here, who we were working with. If you can recognize him,
Sure.
just to introduce
You are
himself.
recognized.
Let him just say a little bit about the company.
Sure. So, Matt Kreutzer with Zobrio. I've been with Zobrio 7 years. Zobrio has been in Richmond Heights for 30 years. We're located right next to Mr. Wizards, if you know where that is, on Big Bend. We've been working with the city of Brentwood for well over a decade. We do financial systems. We've been doing them for 30 years and excited to be working with Brentwood as we implement the new financial system.
I will just really add that one of the things that tipped the scales for me is, I don't know if you remember, but last year we had a malfunction with the accounting software, which is when we knew we really needed to upgrade. And the personal customer service that we got, with the fact that they're in town, from John, who is the CEO, coming into our office and working with us. I think Matt did, and your off-site people were on the phone with us. Customer service was excellent. This Rana, who said I'd run the other way, the reason she said that is she'd been on the phone with the other one we were considering at one time for an hour and 20 minutes on the phone. We get personal service from them, so, and they're local. All those things considered, they were the best fit for Brentwood. And we're saving money out of our budget. Thank you very much.
Motion to approve to the
Thanks,
full
Matt.
board selecting Zobro to the tune of $65,948 for upgrading the financial software for the city of Brentwood.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, it's approved. All right, item G, information on tenant leases.
This is just information only. We closed on a number of properties that were previously owned by MB West. And of those 3 properties, there are tenants in 3 of those buildings. And we are negotiating a certain time for them to move out, hopefully sometime in September. And then for the time being, they will be making their rental payments or lease payments to the city. So we're just making you aware that Karen's going to be creating a revenue line item in the Stormwater and Parks Improvement Fund, and those lease payments will be deposited there. Also sharing with you in this email or in this report that those funds will be allocated to go back to the cops. So it will not be spent on Parks and Rec items specifically cops related or the Brentwood Bound project related.
I love that.
Thank you.
Great. It just logged me out.
You want mine?
You didn't hit.
Being gone for so long, I logged out.
I'm up. Last time.
Item H,
Yes.
reclassification of Parks and Rec. Thank you.
Yes.
Team effort. Teamwork makes the dream work.
All right, last item on the agenda, hopefully I'll make this fairly quick. So the department's just seeking to approve to reclassify the assistant program coordinator and the program coordinator position in the current compensation plan. And the reason I wanted to do this is I became concerned about the salary range for both positions when our last assistant program coordinator left for a lateral position in a comparable city. When she left, she stated she received a $10,000 increase in salary, which was a primary reason for her decision to apply and ultimately leave to take the job. And obviously, this didn't seem consistent with our pay classification system approved in 15, which states that we should be based on the 75th percentile of a salary survey of comparable positions for peer communities. So what I did at that point was to see where I thought we were at. And so knowing all the departments and knowing the directors, I sent out a quick email saying if I could get the job titles, salary range, education requirement and experience requirements for entry-level positions, which is what our assistant program coordinator is, and a supervisory position. And I think I attached that sheet or that chart, which shows you. And what you'll see is that our assistant program coordinator is the lowest salary range of all of our comparable cities. And the assistant program coordinator is the second lowest salary for all the comparable cities. So well below what we should be paying based on our salary survey, salary compensation. So what we did was we met with the human resource manager and the city administrator to discuss those survey results. And I made the recommendation that we should move them up to range 9 and range 14. At that point, we said maybe we should probably bring Higbee and Associates involved, obviously, which they've done all of our comparable study. Higbee was asked to look at the data and either confirm or make their own recommendation. And what Higbee did was did their own study, and basically, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. The issue with Parks and Recreation is that our job descriptions aren't comparable from city to city. And that becomes the issue across the board. Director is a simple one. There's directors in every city. You can get the superintendent or assistant director level, that becomes consistent across the board. Once you get below that level, the job descriptions become varied because each position is doing different jobs. So we have an ice rink, so there's not many comparable cities that have ice rinks. And so when we have an assistant ice rink programmer, there's not many assistant programmers that have an assistant program job description that runs with an ice rink. And that's where it becomes difficult. And then if you look at the the description, you have assistant program coordinators, recreation specialist, assistant supervisor, assistant coordinator. Even the job names are a little bit different as well, and that becomes difficult as well. So the Parks and Recreation profession as a whole, we've done ourselves a disservice by not unifying basically our jobs in a little bit easier way as far as a level. So that's something I'd like to work with our profession on, but that's another discussion for another day. And so that's basically where Higbee came back. She did make the recommendation that the assistant programmer should be moved to a range 9. She did disagree a little bit. She thought that she felt the program coordinator should only be moved to range 12. And then thought that in the future, the city could explore an assistant operations manager or an assistant operations superintendent. That left some room for advancement within the department. The issue with that is that there's not that level in any other Parks and Recreation departments. So again, if we did that, that wouldn't be industry standard within Parks and Recreation. And so then again, if we did that, we wouldn't have that sort of comparable for any other departments throughout any of the comparable cities. We have directors, we have that next level, either assistant or superintendents, and then you have programmers and assistant programmers. That's pretty much the way all departments run. So to add that next level, it just isn't being done. And then especially, to be honest, in a department a little bit smaller like we are, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's why I basically said I disagreed with that suggestion. While I agree that it'd be nice to have that advancement level, we put ourselves back in a position by not having a comparable job description, and then it really doesn't make sense within my department, honestly. So that's what we'd like to do, and so we'd like to move it forward this year so we can hopefully correct what's going on. We do have savings in our budget this year from staff vacancies to make the move. I thought when I looked at it and looked at running the numbers and showed Karen, based on safe vacancies, if we did it on the July 13th budget, which is not, July 13th payroll, we'd actually be saving, we'd be able to do it within our budget. And obviously we wouldn't be able to do it July 13th because this wouldn't go to the board till August. So we'd still be saving money. So obviously there'll probably be some questions.
Alderman Leahy?
If I'm not mistaken, next year is the full review of the comparables for the cities.
I
It's
think we
the
just
even
did it
years.
last
Yeah.
year. So it's not next year, it's the year after. We do it every 2 years. So 18 plus 2.
Is
Is
20.
that 20?
That's
We
next
just-
year.
We just did it last year.
We did it.
You're both, in a way, you're both right. We just completed it in 18, so it would be in 20, but it wouldn't go into effect until 21, if that
to work
makes sense.
Okay. I have a question. If the salary for program coordinator or whatever moves up, can we attract other people who might be interested in doing senior programs so we can revisit the idea of upgrading our senior program?
I think that's a different topic.
Yeah, you're trying to,
Just trying not to step on that one, yeah.
Happy to entertain that, but that's a different topic.
Depends how you vote.
For the benefit of the committee, I'm not in favor of cherry picking, reviewing specific individual positions, because it sets a bad precedent for any time anybody else wants to go shifting it around. And I think we start chipping away at why we moved to a comparison arrangement and use the 14 to do it and stay disciplined. Thus, I understand, and yes, I just lost an employee because she found a better job somewhere else. The dilemma is it just throws a flag. When we get to the point of review, Higbee, you need to at least see turnovers.
If I can interject on that, we actually did ask Ms. Higbee to look at the assistant program coordinator in the 18 go-round, and part of the problem there is that there were no comparators to that. So in essence, we had no movement on that because we had no one to compare it to. her recommendation was that based on the job description we had, her thought process was that that position should have been higher to begin with, but we didn't implement it at the time. We already had individuals in that position.
Yeah.
So in a way, again, I don't want to kind of sound like I'm walking the fence, but you're both right in that. We looked at it in 18. The problem is that there wasn't sufficient data to kind of push us. Now there is that data to push us. This is a position that honestly does need to be moved up. I mean, it's lower than just slightly, well, it's slightly higher than a laborer.
Yeah.
And we're asking, in essence, someone to come in that is degreed, potentially has anywhere from 1 to 3 years worth of experience, and they're making less than they could do as summer help in the Public Works Department or in the Parks Department. So the part of the problem, the reason Eric is looking at the secondary position is because then you get into compression. If you move a position up too much, so I would have to say I am in agreement with Eric with regards to the desire to move this up. I understand your concern, but again, I think I understand the concern about setting a dangerous precedent for this. And I would agree, but again, we did look at this in 18, and the problem was that when we were presented with the information, there really were no comparators. We kind of interpreted that or took that incorrectly to mean that it was okay where it is, and when she reevaluated it, she told us we weren't okay with it.
If we would follow this suggestion and bump and make this happen, and let's say we get it started so it takes effect by the 1st of September
Sure.
to work through. And then we do our budget arrangement for the 2020 year, and we vote to put a step plan in. Now I have a person that's been a set, now he's jumped again. Can you see where that adversely affects the rest of the 117 or 118 Brentwood employees? How come this person keeps getting raises and bumps up, and the rest of them, if you're going to treat the staff as a consistent group, then your policy has to be locked in to let's make the adjustment at the right time and everybody gets treated properly. No, let's chip away at it. That's the gate that I think you're opening, and I'm not comfortable going down that road.
May I ask a question? Yes. Jason, were there any other positions throughout the city where Higby recommended or that could be questionable like this? Are there any others that could go one way or the other? So how many might we be
Well, what we
looking at?
typically do when we go out for the full survey is she doesn't look at every single position within the city. We ask specific positions to be looked at. As an example, one of the ones that was specifically asked to be looked at was the project manager for the Public Works Department. Now, again, I'm referring back to the 18 process. The thought was, and if I don't want to put words in Dan's mouth, but that perhaps that individual was at a lower rate of pay than he should have been. When we did that survey, that was not justified. We kept that position where it was. This was really the only position that there was any even wiggle room on that we didn't move forward with at that time. Now, we did make some changes the last go-round. The HR position was one of those that was moved, as was the payroll, or the finance clerk actually went down a step, and there was several others that moved up as well. So we did make changes at the time. This is one that perhaps should have been done. We didn't do it in 18.
But my question is then, is this going to be an isolated instance?
This
do you
is an
think?
isolated.
I believe that it is, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I think I understand what you're saying, Alderman Leahy, and I appreciate that. I think my argument for my staff, and obviously I'm arguing for my staff, is that where most of the rest of the city staff is at the 75th, somewhere between the 70th and the 80th percentile, my staff right there are at the first percentile. I mean, they're the bottom of what they're supposed to be being paid for the comparable cities. I mean, and that's what's tough for me to talk to them about. And I'm just trying to get them what our city says it's important to pay our staff at the 75th percentile. They're not. They're being paid at the lowest percentile.
The alternative is we leave it in place, and do nothing. We hire someone, and a year from now, that person leaves. But then it gives us a chance to
Thank
clean
you.
it up. So that's the risk.
Well, yes, that is the risk. The limit is that I do have the open position. I can go out and request, we're looking. I'm venturing, you will get applications. Now, from there, you're gonna go through your process and you will pick a candidate. That candidate will say yay or nay to the final offer that is made and said, let's get going. I think you will still find someone to hire to do the job as it is. 2020, we get Higby on board to put in something for 2021 and adjust it. But I've got it locked and it's not just being chipped away at. I'm afraid we open that door, we'll never close it.
Can I disagree?
Yeah,
I think you get what you pay for. I think we have some terrific employees, and if you set a number, you're going to get someone who would be happy working for that. You set a higher salary, we're going to get people who are better qualified, and the higher salary will attract them. So we don't want to hire somebody who's mediocre and train them and go through everything when we could have had somebody who really was good. There's a difference, a market difference in the salary, so there'd be a market difference in who we hire.
And-
If it's not a huge difference in our fiscal budget, let's do it. It's an isolated instance, we're not gonna do it next week again. So
Well, my concern is that, to Alderman Leahy's credit, is that it's not gonna be an isolated, incident, and all of a sudden everyone else is gonna find isolated incidences. Apparently, they're all gonna have positions that no one can
But
classify and
it depends if the
understand,
city administrator brings it forward.
I mean, additionally,
Keep your thumb on that.
philosophically, we have these experts we hire for their expertise. They give us their opinions and then we don't follow them. I mean, why aren't we, why 14 and not 12, and why not follow the expert's advice? Because that's what we pay her to
Because
tell us.
oftentimes, when a consultant makes this kind of a report, it's through negotiations. We work with it on a more daily basis, so we're able to determine, okay, what's the compression? How much does that impact the city? How much does that impact other positions that are filled? And from that analysis is what both Jason and Eric are bringing forward. The pay plan that you approved initially back in 2015, 2016, it wasn't just, this is what the consultant presented, adopt it. It was, this is what the consultant presented, staff, let's review it and give feedback and work until we have something that we can support and she can support and bring forward to the board. That's the process.
And that was actually the pushback on this particular go-round when we asked her, and she came back and said what Eric had mentioned, the assistant or the deputy assistant operations manager, that really, while that might present a progression, it's not appropriate for the structure of our organization. So to, in essence, put a position out there that would never get filled, it really isn't beneficial. And that was why Eric is arguing the 14 versus the 12 that she had come back for. That's, again, I don't know if I'm eloquently enough explaining why Eric is making that recommendation, and I second it.
Where does that put, if we, does that put that category of job in the 75th percentile to bump it to 14?
In this, if you put it in the range 14, it would put it 5th among a comparative study, so it'd put it right around the 60th. So it wouldn't even put it within the 75th, but it was still, at that point, then what Higby and Associates said is that that was range 1, and then you could hire someone in range 2 or range 3 to get them up to that 75th.
And just so that you folks are aware, and if I'm saying something that you're already aware of, I apologize, but the way that the grid structure works is that the department head has the latitude to bring someone in between step 1 and step 3 of any given grid. They can then request to the city administrator to go up to step 5. If they, for whatever reason, their accreditation or whatever they bring to the table warrants it, the city administrator can then go to the board at large to ask that they bring them in at a higher grid than step 5. So that's kind of where her argument of moving it to that particular pay grid makes a little bit more sense because we can move. Now, typically, we as a city don't usually bring too many folks on above step 3. It's few and far between.
I move that we don't have to recommend to the board.
You do.
We do.
Yes.
I move that we recommend to the board that we reclassify the 2 positions that are at 0 comparator to the ranges as presented by Eric.
I guess I'm confused. Are you wanting their recommendation to go
Yes.
forward to the board?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second that. So roll call, or do we need roll call, or all those in favor, say aye?
Yeah. Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
So, yeah, okay.
So the board can hash it out.
That's right. The fight continues.
The discussion continues.
True, fair. Okay. All right, citizen comments. Come on now, we got a citizen.
We have a citizen.
Come forward, introduce your address. You'll be
My name is
3
Chris
minutes.
Norton. I live at 9421 Tillis Drive. And thanks for the opportunity. I came for 3 reasons. The first is to tell you a little bit of the story of Swim Club Lane, and sort of tell you about my role in making this mess, so that they're asking you to clean up. Swim Club Lane was budgeted in 2018. Dan and I met with representatives of the swim club. I'm heavily involved. All 3 of my kids swim for the Gator team. I've been on the board of directors. I've done the swim team management so I'm heavily involved with that organization. We met out there. They relayed to us the plans that they had made to do the improvements. We all agreed that it would be kind of silly to go and pave the street and then have all the bulldozers and dump trucks and everything that they were bringing in. What we didn't know, and I don't know that, well, I certainly didn't know it, I don't believe Dan knew it, was that if we didn't spend the money in 2018, it disappeared. And so we were all just under the impression that, hey, when we're done with the construction, we'll give the city a call, they'll come out and pave the street. Well, no, that's not how it works. So anyway, my fault for not understanding that, but that's why Swim Club Lane is being pushed with such urgency, is because they, with my sort of, telling them, hey, this is no problem, this is how we're going to, and they were told that they would get that street paved, their street, it's the city street. But anyway, they were told that it would happen, and then they were kind of told, well, no, it's not in the budget till 2023. So that's the mess that I helped create, and I thank you all for helping to clean it up, and I do think that there's a lot of people who are Brentwood residents who will very much appreciate having that done. So thank you very much for that. Second thing, if I could ask that somebody have a look at the transparency portal. I've been on there a couple times in the last couple months, and it's way out of date. If we're not doing it anymore, that's fine, but if we are doing it, it'd be great if we could keep it up to date. The final thing is, and I think this will be good news for everybody, the Citizens for Brentwood Bound is going to be closing out their political action committee. We had a very successful thing, as you know, with the vote. And we will be contributing $3,200 and something to the project fund as the remainder of the funds that we did not spend. So now the project will not cost $79 million, it will cost $78,900,000. So hey, we're doing all we can to keep the project under budget. So thank you.
Thank you for the donation.
Thank you.
It sounds as though there should be a bench by the creek that says contributed by citizens.
A bench by the creek.
A bench by the creek with a label.
An hour's engineering time or
We got a second for the motion to adjourn?
We do. I second
All right,
that
all those in
motion.
favor? Aye. Go in peace. Okay.
Okay.